So basically, we've developed technology that enables cities to basically halve planning assessment times using our world first AI. And we've been doing a lot of work around the world. In particular, in the last couple of years, I think I've spent half my life in North America, in the US and Canada. But we're based in Sydney, Australia, as you can probably tell from my accent. And it's quite incredible to produce world first technology that's helping to solve a great problem to speed up permitting and increase housing supply. Now, the first part of what we do is our explore and design part. And I'm going to show you this in more detail, but I just want to show you a few slides before I go on to the actual demo. And the second part is the permit approval part. I'll start with the explore and design part because this is the foundation of the platform, and you can see that on the left. And what it does is we educate the applicant so they first of all know, what are the bylaws that apply, what's permitted, what's not permitted, and it sets out applications early on, even before the land is purchased. That's important because we hear horror stories, of people who have bought land and they want to develop, X, Y, or Z, but they can't because it's not permitted. And then they've made a very costly decision. And this not only applies to buildings, but it applies to businesses and leases. And we've heard that people sign up for 5-year leases and for a particular type of business, and then realize afterwards that it's not even permitted to perform that type of business. So the more we can educate people up front through data, all this is at the point of submitting a permit, then we're really focused on that sort of pre-permit side of things. Some of the things that we're hearing globally when we're speaking to cities is, and this is really good, it's basically the challenges of permitting. So, this inconsistency in submission completeness and quality. So, for instance, a permit application and a design submission gets submitted and it's taking a while to get approved, and straight away it's the city that's getting the blame for taking all the time to assess it, when the real systemic problem often is the quality of the submission in the first place and the inconsistency in the submission. And I'm sure you can all identify with that. We're also hearing that cities have staff shortages in permitting, permit checking, and there's a high turnover. So, this sort of technology helps with that. And, permit approvals can take many months, even a year in some cities. Applicants, they're submitting like 3+ times. That amount of rework is occurring to resolve non-compliance issues. And, there is a bit of a stigma that you often hear, and that is that permitting can be associated with poor customer satisfaction because, everyone wants what they want and they want it now. And then the other big area is, the delays in permit approvals. They add a lot of cost to the applicants and to the city. Like I've read studies where, we're talking and got feedback from cities, $5,000 to $10,000 a month that it's costing an applicant with a single family permit. And for a duplex, townhomes or something like that can be tens of thousands a month, and multifamily can be hundreds of thousands a month. So, these are really serious challenges, and it's great to have developed technology that really helps cities overcome a lot of these problems. So basically, how does it work? And how our e-check works, so I'm going to again show this to you live in a second. It's basically a 2-step process. And the first step is that, we create a digitized version of the planning codes or bylaw for plan review assessment. And the second step is the applicant submits their design as is for a pre-check assessment. So before the applicant actually submits their design application, basically they're doing a pre-check report to check for compliance. So they don't need to change anything. They need to modify their workflow. Whatever they're going to submit to the city, they basically submit through ArchiStar for pre-assessment. And our e-check technology will basically read the designs from PDF drawings. And an applicant can submit by CAD or BIM, and we accept all formats. But it is a PDF. We read the drawings, and the design will assess the design against the digitized code, and then that results in a standardized compliance report. And this gets provided with every application, and it's really cool how it works. And if you think about it, when the applicant first submits, there may be a lot of what we would call red crosses, which I'll show you in a moment. But and they're in non-compliant areas, well, then the applicant will straight away, know those areas and will want to fix those areas before they submit. So they'll know where the non-compliance is. So now I'm just going to move over, and I'm going to actually take you onto the platform. And just before I do that, I should probably give you a little bit more context about Archistar. And that is, our founder is a guy by the name of Dr. Ben Curry. And Ben is an architect by background, and he's got a PhD in 3D generative design. Now, what does that mean? It's basically generative AI using AI to bring buildings up out of the ground digitally using algorithms and geometry. So it's quite amazing. And we've been focusing on this technology, like streamlining processes and how you can use generative design to really fast track and really understand what you can do on your land. And we've been on a journey, and like we started to evolve as we started to work with the industry, and we went from what we call generative design or speculative design to being able to assess real designs. And when we started with 3D generative design, it was quite amazing, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And this very quickly turned into digitizing planning and zoning bylaws to drive that generative design. And in Australia, and you can see our platform, I don't think any property platform's been built like this in the world. We spent something like 100,000 hours loading 900 million lines of planning code for the whole country. And those planning rules then powered our parametric design generators, which are design strategies. And so it's basically not just about what we design, but it's about the rules and regulations that underpin that. And then we started speaking with the government, in Australia and overseas about one of the biggest issues, which is the permit workflow process. And if we could use digitized zoning rules to do speculative design to test out what is possible, then could we apply that same technology to start pre-assessing incoming submissions and incoming permits? And we've evolved over time, and now we're the first company in the world that can accept submissions and check actual designs against zoning bylaw, and now even building code, which is really exciting. And I'll tell you more about that shortly. So if you just start to look here, so this is basically our property platform. And in Australia, we produce this as a SaaS model, and we sell it to the industry where any user, anyone within a city, developers, agents, property professionals can have access to it to understand development potential and to do their property research. And we have over 30,000 users. We've converted it now to be our eCheck platform in North America, and it becomes a white label platform for cities to use. And it also uses our eCheck submission portal. So what we do is, it's basically built in such a way that it's very user-friendly. This is the 4th iteration, so it's really been built so it's extremely easy to use and very customer-centric. So I can click onto any property, and what you'll see here is I can start to get a summary. So basically, what the actual zoning is. I can link back to property portal data, lot size, street frontage, but then we go into this area of land use. So if I go here into land use, like this is the permitted use. And like people are forever making phone calls and putting pressure on cities asking them for this information. What can I do with my land? Is this permitted? Is this not permitted? Well, here it's very quickly identified. We can even do the same with like the lease uses and all the rest of it. So, and then once we do that, we go into the deeper planning rules, and this gets really, really cool. So, we digitize planning rules. So you can go into any particular site and start to see, what the maximum building height is, what's the front setback, what's the maximum site coverage. This is like for each of the particular permitted uses. And so it's one thing to be zoned and for it to be permitted to do a particular type of use, but there are other requirements that need to be met. And it's very easy to get that information here. So, for instance, if you want to build a duplex in this zoning, you have to have 400 square meters. If you don't have that, of course, in the US, we're dealing in feet. But and then, if that size block was under 400 square meters, well, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So it's really cool to be able to show that. And then what we also do is we ingest whatever layers the city wants us to. So things like zoning. So here's your zoning layers. You've got things like 3D buildings. So here's the existing footprint, and I could go and put up, the maximum, and you start to see, is anything protruding or is it all correct? Even like things like 1 meter contours. So we basically can ingest any data, all right, by API. And that's what we're doing with the cities. And then you've got all your risk layers, things like, flood, and you can see that coming in and off. Here in this part of the world, we have some bushfire, but even things like heritage properties. So it's like any constituent within the city can basically go and see this and understand it really easily. And again, this is all about customer experience. Even a few crazy layers here at koala biodiversity and fire ant, which is not so relevant over here, but it's relevant back home. And there's even other cool layers that I can start to talk about. Like a really good one that we recently added is neighborlytics, and with neighborlytics, so you can basically start to see hotspots based on mobile coverage, which is really, using data very efficiently. But then, we go further and, we as a next level, which cities can do on our platform, they can start adding like things like sales data, what's on the market from property portals and construction information and all sorts of data layers. Then we go into, I wanted to show you some generative design, and this is a speculative design. So, and this is what Archistar is really famous for, and what our CEO has created with our generative team. And like, if I was to go here onto a particular block of land, so you can see here, it's 783 square meters. I can jump in here, and this is all the different parametric design generators, subdivisions, duplexes, townhomes, mixed use. But let's just say we look at duplexes by code. So these are literally approved designs. So it's looking at this particular site, and it will now generate compliant duplex designs, which is extremely cool. So that just will take a second, and you can start to see here. So this is literally a compliant design. And if I go here, more info, you can see basically there's all the literal information about lot area, lot width, floor space ratio, and so on. You can even go and do like a reverse feasibility as to what you'd pay for the land. This is how much they'd sell for. This is the construction costs, and if there was agents' fees to sell and professional fees and contingency and all the rest of it, and just say you wanted to make a 20% profit if you were the developer or whatever, well, this is how much I could pay for the land. So all that type of functionality sort of built in here. But here's another design as well. You can see some trees here. This one's a detached. But then I can move into much more complex. I think I've got one here that I wanted to show you. So if I show you what we would call a condominium type development, just grab something here that would be of interest. So here's and on this particular site, and bear in mind, we easily merge properties together using the technology, and anyone can do it. They just add properties on. But here, you start to see the power of generating much larger developments. So like here's some, and there's many design strategies here. And you can start to look at, you can see lift wells and lift shafts and stairwells, and start to look at many different strategies as we go forward. And then the analytics attached to them. So things like sunlight analysis. So here's these ones here, 6 hours plus sunlight. They're going to be worth more money. Things like ground shadows. So you can see I've switched on the ground shadows, but when you start to turn on the existing buildings as well, and then turn on the ground shadows, it becomes quite interesting as to the impact that it has. So maybe not so good for some of these buildings next to it based on the ground shadowing. And that would have some sort of impact. So this is sort of showing you generative design, and bear in mind the planning rules are powering this behind it. Your setbacks, your height, your maximum heights, floor space ratios, and all that particular data. But it's amazing to be able to visualize all that, and so for everyone being assessed, it's telling you exactly how many hours of sunlight I showed you, and all this other analytics. So really super powerful technology. But what we're really doing here is it's all about educating the applicant and working through that, so you actually know what you can and can't do on your property. What's good about this is that you're educating even before the application, anyone's even thinking of an application, very early in the design part of it. Even before someone even acquires a property, they're starting to look at what's possible and what's not. So I could spend a lot of time on generative design, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse at it because, and we're not selling this to cities at the moment. It's something that could be an add-on module for, to provide to developers and what have you. But the important thing is here, this is speculative design, and it was through this technology, right, that we were able to develop our e-check technology. And where we started with e-check was with the Victorian government in Australia, basically said, if you can do what you're doing with generative AI for speculative design, are you able to do the same thing on real designs? So we went and solved the hardest problem first, which was 3D BIM. And we built e-check for 3D BIM. So basically digitize the planning rules of the zoning bylaw, upload a 3D plan, and we built technology that was able to then read that particular uploaded design and produce a compliance report. Now, to put into perspective, if you understand permit checking, you know that probably at least 60% of it is all mathematical, it's all geometry, it's all measurement. It's not subjective, it's objective. So anything that is objective, we have built the technology to automatically check it. So for instance, if I look here, you can see the rules and you can see the answer. This is what I mean by tick cross. So, front wall is set back no less than 25% of the area of the front facade of the building. It's passed, and that's the reason why. And this is basically all the rules, all that detail, all that checking is being done automatically. Entrance to the dwelling, things like detailed articulation. And I could read through each of them, but you start to see what I'm saying here. Building height, checking it all automatically. And here, for instance, you've got one here, which is non-compliant. And you can see that line there. And this is in relation to the eaves, fascia, and gutters. Now, the beautiful thing about this technology is this is not after the event. This is before the event, right? So the applicant is actually doing a pre-check report before they submit, not after they submit. So therefore, they would do their pre-check report, they'll get the results, and then they'll fix it up before they submit. Otherwise, if they submit, they want to have a good reason as to why a variance should be allowed. But what applicants want to know is they want to know the answers to the exam before the test. That's a good way to put it. And that's what eCheck's about. It's basically telling the applicant what compliance is, and they can easily design to compliance using this technology. Now, no one has to do what I was just doing. They basically just download a report. Sorry about that. I'm just putting that back on. But basically, when they download a report, and I might have one loaded in here. It will basically show them everything that we just did then, but in one large report. It's just taking us back here for a second. So here's the report, and because there's metadata here, you get an instant report. So basically, and this is quite a big report, but everything that I was just showing you, it's showing you the crosses and the ticks, and it's all built and aligned the same way that the zoning bylaw is written, and then the exact wording as to what the rule is, why it's approved, why it's not approved. So we go through that process. Now, this is 3D BIM. The industry's not at 3D BIM. So we solved the hardest problem first. Then we worked backwards and did CAD. And then we solved the problem where most of the applications are occurring, which is with PDF, because people are submitting in PDF. So, this gets really exciting. And basically, to be able to check the PDF designs and provide a compliance report, is really groundbreaking. And this is the City of Vancouver, who's now gone live with our eCheck technology. It was actually the City of Vancouver that brought us to North America in the first place, and really led the way with this technology. So if you look here, we're able to basically go into, let's say, floor area, and it's all being checked automatically, but you can see this is just a normal PDF design. And we can dive in, we can exclude out individual components. Like you may get the deck excluded, your surface parking might get excluded to a certain point, and then it's included. But basically, and here you can see, I think the rule was, 25% of the side area. So it's basically automatically checking that. So you can see it doing all this. Then we go to other areas, say building height, and building height's really an interesting one to talk about. Because when we start talking about building height, so if you look at how this stuff is calculated in say the city of Vancouver, you can see the way they calculate the base level of where to measure the height from. So they pick they pick 4 points or 4 corners of the site. They get the base elevation, and then it's an interpolation as to where the building is to determine what the ground level is in its natural form would be. So this becomes like an individual line here. So if you look here, so that's it there. And then, if I go into any of the elevations, it will then show you. And so basically what we're doing here is that every time the submission comes in with this calculation, the city's getting this format, so they know exactly how it's calculated, and then it comes in consistently. But I guarantee the submissions coming through now, they basically don't come through with this algorithm and set out on it. So basically, you have to do the work, or they've got to do the work on their end to figure out how they got to that calculation. Whereas this is basically showing just consistency. And, we can look at other things here, like this is a laneway house, but you start to look at the location. So it's actually showing that it's compliant straight away, right? Whereas this particular setback is non-compliant. It should be 0.9, not 0.6. The same with this particular one. It's non-compliant. So the applicant would know to fix that up before they submit. So, and then, other things here like required spaces. So, habitable rooms. It's checking out all this particular detail very quickly and easily. And as I said, this has been built for the city of Vancouver and for their laneway homes. And it's basically an automatic check. And the nice thing about this also is that you get all these ticks and crosses, but it results in what we call a data stream, so that every submission is now digitized and you extract out all this data in the same format every time. So basically you can access it by API, and as the city's now getting these submissions all digitized, they can start to detect trends in what is passing and what is failing. And this becomes really powerful to the city, as it's seeing like what clauses, like for instance, are failing at first submission, or what needs more education, or what might need revising. And this starts to give the data to work through all that. So if you look there, here it is here. You start to see all this particular data. And a picture tells a story. And we've already done a lot of this with the city of Vancouver when we were implementing, like realizing how much duplications there were with zoning bylaw, how often certain rules, they were just actually there was always a variance. So why not change the rule or look at why that's happening? Because all as it was doing was slowing down the process when it was just overridden all the time. So, and again, this is a PDF report that the applicant receives, and the report for PDF or the whole sort of checking process takes a day because we do have to use our technology to mark up the AI um, on the um, on the drawing, but then you can see the report that's coming through here, the ticks and the crosses, and generally the applicant will go straight to the crosses. But it's also interesting when you do look at what is ticked and seeing, is there more to work with than what you thought when you start to look at it mathematically? And also those areas where that are subjective, we're also guiding that they need to be dealt with, separately because they're not a calculation, they're a discussion as such. But yeah, you can link back into the rules straight here. And again, exactly what I showed you before. But the applicant gets the report, they look at the report, and then they're able to fix up what they've submitted and then submit nicely. Now, this technology also integrates with any permit workflow automation software. So whatever software the city's using, we've partnered with many already, whether it be Posse or, Amanda or Clarity or whatever it may be. We form part of the workflow. We come in before they submit. So for instance, the applicant may go to submit at the point of during on the permit workflow technology that they're using, and then they would be requested to do an e-check report and bumped back into the city platform, which is the ArchiStar platform, to then look at the particular property, do submit a pre-check report, check for compliance, fix it up, maybe do one more after they've done the first one to see how they've checked things up, and then submit back through the permit workflow automation software. So there's a whole nice workflow there. But there is two aspects of it. There is the platform, which is basically, helping constituents to understand planning rules, understand permitted uses, start, understand what's possible and what's not. And then there is the aspect of being able to do the e-check permit assessment reports. Now, just before I finish up, and I know I've gone a little bit over because there's so much to tell you guys, but we've also started working with the building code, and I really wanted to tell you about this. This is actually the city of Burlington actually decided to do a particular pilot with us to test out the technology in relation to the building code. And I'll just bring that up. And what we did was we checked certain parts of the code, and it's really cool what we've been able to achieve here. And just while this is loading up, we've also just started a pilot with the International Code Council with 10 cities in the US to test out and prove out the technology in relation to the International Building Code, which is very exciting. So not only zoning bylaw, but also obviously the building code. And the wonderful thing about the building code is no matter what size city you are, the rules are the same in respect to the state or the province you're at. But if I just quickly show you this, you can see here in the building code that we've started. So this is a really interesting one here. It's a little bit, but you can start to see, ceiling heights and There is a little bit of a lag here, guys. So you can see here, checking the ceilings in bulk. You look here at, the bedroom or bedroom space with ceiling height. Then we go here into things like, dining rooms. And this is really, and the living spaces. On the plans, it doesn't separate dining and kitchen. But our technology is able, because it's already loaded into the engine, we're able to actually break down what's permitted within the dining, kitchen, and living areas. So you could have like multiple living, dining, and kitchen combined, and the individual component of that has to be a minimum area and a minimum size. So then you start to look at that. And the interesting thing here is that they don't mark it up on the plans, as I said. So on the plans, it's just one space. And we're able to do that automatically here using eCheck as an example. And yeah, just a couple of other little things like hallways. So automatically checking the hallway widths or or looking at doorway sizes. So you can see that there. Again, we can basically check anything that has any type of geometry in it, which is really cool. And finally, even things like stairways. And this is, we also did this when we did the pilot. And when you look at the stairways, you're looking at what are the minimum dimensions of the individual stairs, or what's the height between the staircases, which is here. You can see that. So it's automatically checking everything at once, even the individual height over the stairs. See that. So it's really amazing what we can do here. So, and again, this is building code, and we've only just started working on the building code, but there's a lot of mathematics involved in the building code, and so much time is spent checking things that we can easily check using our technology by applying our eCheck technology to the building code.